Hey guys, I'm Andrew with Diving Sports, and today we're going to be going over all the basics of weight belts for spearfishing and freediving. We're going to talk about the different types of weight belts, different materials, how to set them up, and how to use them safely. And because we're going to be covering a couple different topics, I've gone ahead and put the timestamps down in the description for you guys, and you should be able to see the chapters in the video as well so you can navigate through the different topics. Now, at their most basic level, weight belts are just going to be some type of belt that you're going to use to hold your lead weights. Now, this is going to help to offset the positive buoyancy of your wetsuit or your body, and it's going to help you get down to depth easier. Now, there are different things that we can add onto our weight belts, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Now, typically weight belts are going to be made with one of three different materials. We've got our nylon belts, we've got our rubber belts, and then our silicone belts as well. Now, nylon belts are going to be the cheapest ones that you can get, and this is personally the style that I use when I first started spearfishing, but I really don't recommend these unless you're on a really tight budget. Just because these don't have any type of stretch or grip to them, so they're not going to stay in place while you're diving. And they also don't compress, so as your body compresses at depth, they are going to stay the same size and they're really just going to slide all around. So they're not super useful for spearfishing or freediving, and I really don't recommend these, but if you're on a budget, it is an option. Now, next up, we've got our rubber and silicone belts, and this is the style that we're typically going to recommend you guys to use. They are a little bit more expensive than nylon, however, they're definitely worth the money. So with the rubber belts, we do have a grip texture to it and some stretch as well, so it's really going to fit your body and compress with you as you dive, and it's not going to slide around as easily as the nylon ones will. And because these do have a thicker material and some grip to them, your weights aren't going to slide around the belt like they would with a nylon one. Now, moving to the silicone belts, these ones are going to be the most expensive ones you can get, but they do offer you the best in terms of stretch, and they're the most durable and resistant to the elements. Now, we've also got different styles and types of buckles. First up, we've got the clasp style buckle. Now, these are pretty easy to use. You just got to put the end of the belt through it, and it allows you to really cinch it exactly to where you need it to be. Now, this is obviously not where you're going to wear your belt. I'm just doing this so you guys can see it on the video. But yeah, these are really great. They're super easy to use. They come in plastic and metal as well. Plastic is going to be cheaper and less durable. They can also sometimes not be as smooth when you're opening and closing them, whereas metal is going to be smoother and more durable as well. And next up, we've got the Marseille style belt buckle. Now, this just looks like a normal pant belt. It works in the same way as well. You just got to put the end of the belt through there, and the prong will engage into these holes as well. Now, the only downside to using this style of belt is that you are limited to the holes that are already in the belt unless you want to add your own. So it's not going to be as easy to cinch down exactly to your size like with the clasp buckle. Now, we've also got a bunch of different styles of weights. Now, you've got your bullet weights that I don't have any in the shop, but I've got a picture here for you. And then you've got the pass-through weights. You've got the uncoated and then the coated as well. So most people are going with uncoated unless you're diving off a boat, in which case this is going to be a really great option because it just helps to protect the surface of the boat and prevent scratches. And next, we're going to talk about weight belt safety. Now, the biggest safety concern is wearing too much weight on your belt. Now, the amount of weight that you're going to be using is really going to vary from person to person, as well as how much you weigh, how deep you're diving, what kind of style of diving you're doing, and as well as how thick your wetsuit is. Typically, the thicker your wetsuit, the more weight you're going to have to use in your belt, versus if you have a thinner wetsuit, you're not going to have to use as much. And you also want to think about how deep you're going to be diving. Usually, the deeper you dive, the less weight you're going to have on your belt, and if you're staying in the shallow water, you're often going to be using a little bit more weight to help you stay down at the bottom. Now, in general, if you're diving around 15 meters deep, you want to be neutral at about 10 meters. So you're going to be negatively buoyant below 10 meters and positively buoyant above 10 meters. Now, the reason why we do this is that in the event of a shallow water blackout, you do want to be able to float up to the surface and not sink down deeper. And we also want to be able to take our belt off in a hurry if we ever do find ourselves in an emergency situation. And it's pretty easy to do that. All you got to do is just pull on the excess material, and because you've got all that weight on there, it is just going to fall right off. And because we want to be able to do this in a hurry, we don't want to tuck the excess material into the bottom of the belt like this. You will see some people do this, and I just don't recommend it because this is one extra step for you or for a buddy to have to do in an emergency situation. And next, we're going to talk about how to actually set up your weight belt. Now, if you're just using a belt and some weights, it's going to be super easy. All you got to do is just thread the belt through the weights, get it to where you want it to be, and then pass it through one more time, and then just repeat that with the rest of your weights. Now, sometimes if you're using the nylon belts, these will move around, and some thinner rubber ones. So in that case, you may have to use some weight keepers or some D-rings, and I'll show you guys how to do that later. Now, you want to space these out as evenly as possible across the belt. You don't want them to be just on one side because you're going to start to tip over in the water. So you definitely want to disperse them around your body as evenly as possible. Now, when you guys get a brand new weight belt, you are going to find that there's a lot of extra length there, and typically we do want to cut this off. So you want to cut it so that there's about a foot of extra length, so you can still grab that in a safety situation. But before you cut it, I would really recommend that you put all your weights on the belt because that is going to take up some room. And then if you're using a thick wetsuit, to put it on over top the wetsuit as well before you cut it off. Now, with setting up your weight belt, there are going to be a bunch of different things you can add onto it besides your weights, but this is all going to be personal preference and what works for you. And one of those things is a knife. Now, a lot of people don't like adding knives to their belts because they find that they can kind of press into their sides as they're diving down. Now, personally, I've never had that issue and I really like having my knife on my belt, but again, as I said, it's really gonna come down to personal preference and what works for you. Now, you can also add a D-ring onto your belt. Now, these are super handy and useful. They just allow you to hold a ton of different things on your belt, anything from a load assist for a roller gun or a stringer or even a float line. And they're super easy to put on as well. They just get threaded onto the belt just like any of the other weights. And if you're using a nylon belt like this or even a thinner rubber one, which will allow the weights to slide around on there, they're also gonna act as weight heapers. So you just put them on either side of the weights and they're gonna cinch the weight down in there so that they don't move around. And personally, I don't like using a float line on my belt, but if it works for you, it works for you. And if you are gonna do it, I'd recommend you guys to put the D-rings either on the side or on the back of the weight belt. And one of the pros of having your float line attached to your belt is that it's gonna be really easy to recover it if you ever have to drop it in a safety situation. Now, another thing you guys can add onto your weight belt is a stringer. So I'm gonna show you guys how you can do that correctly. And it may look a little bit weird on this belt, but I'm just gonna do it for demonstration purposes. So all you gotta do is have something like a carabiner and a D-ring on one side. You're gonna take the hoop part of the stringer and pass it through there, and then you're gonna wrap it around the back of the body. And then on the other side, you can either secure it, through the top of a weight like this, or you can attach a shark clip on there and then secure it in there as well. Now, the reason why we pass it around the back of the body is so that any fish stays behind you and it's not just all on one side. It's also kind of a safety concern if you just have some line hanging down one part of your body, especially in the front. As you're diving down and you're kind of on the bottom, that can really easily get caught on different things. So if you are gonna do this, definitely make sure that the stringer goes around the back of the body and then you're able to secure it really safely in through here so it doesn't come out. Another style of stringer that people like to use here is this metal hoop style. Now, a lot of people will put this on their belt using pretty much the same system. I would just be really careful with this and make sure that, as you're diving around, that it doesn't get caught on anything. I'd say the safer option with this style of stringer is to put it onto your float. And so that's all the basics of weight belts for spearfishing and freediving. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below. And if you guys need to grab a belt, feel free to come down to the shop or take a look on our website. And all the links for all the gear in the video will be down in the description below. And as always, guys, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.